They called her a slay queen, until she refused to bath for 1 whole year. But when the village found out why, even her enemies cried. The year the rains refused to come, Mirembe stopped bathing. Not in the dramatic cinematic way city stories told, no cliffside monologues or viral videos, just in the slow, bewildering way of small rebellions. One missed morning, another, then mornings folded into weeks until her mirror, which had always been honest, sat untouched like a sleeping animal. She was 22, a slay queen by reputation and outfit. Her heels were small towers, her lip liner sharp enough to split arguments, and her hair, oh her hair, fell like midnight silk that smelled faintly of coconut oil and the expensive perfume she bought when she cashed in the last of her elder brother's savings. People came to know Mirembe by 3 things: her clothes, her laugh, and the way men found reasons to leave their market stalls and barbershops when she sashayed by. She owned the kind of confidence that filled narrow alleys. Yet for some private reason, when the riverbed cracked and the drums of drought beat, she decided that cleanliness could wait. It began after the funeral. Her father had been a man of soft hands and rough jokes, a canoe builder who loved his daughter like the moon loves the sea. Steadfast, constant. When malaria took him in a week and swallowed her household's laughter, Mirembe felt the world shift underneath her feet. The money that had come through pitiful remittances was gone. The elders whispered about debts, about how even funerals demanded coins. And on the last night, when the village gathered beneath the mango tree, an old woman named Nana Amina took Mirembe's hand and did what grandmothers sometimes do. She looked into her eyes as if reading the weather, and she said a thing that tasted like iron. "Child," Nana Amina said, voice rasping like dried maize, "you wash what you can. But there are stains water cannot touch." A half-laugh escaped Mirembe, the kind of derisive smirk the slay queens wore when elders grew poetic. She kissed her father's forehead, dressed in black, and promised herself 2 things: that she would inherit his canoe and row hard enough to not look back, and that she would never be weak in front of anyone again. The next morning, the soap sat on the sink like an accused thing. She touched it once and withdrew as though it had bitten her. "I'll wash tomorrow," she told herself, and tomorrow kept being tomorrow. Word travels with the velocity of gossip in a place where electricity is intermittent and people have nothing else to do. At first it was sympathetic knocks. "You've been through so much, Mirembe." Then it became puzzled looks when she walked through the market and vendors tugged at their wraps, brows furrowed. The slay queen who used to stop time with a smile now moved like an ember, glowing, distant, and above all, undeniable. "I thought it was grief," said Sephew, who sold charcoal and had once been the victim of Mirembe's flirtations. He spoke to anyone who would listen, because Sephew had a habit of making stories his own. "But it's—" He waved his hand and searched for the right word. "It's as if she's chosen to be different." Different became dangerous in days. Children pointed and chanted things they did not understand but felt. "Smelly Mirembe." The market women, who had once vied to borrow her scarf, now kept their baskets between them like shields. Rumors are the small fires that warm a town in the absence of news. Every rumor carried a new seasoning. Some said Mirembe had been cursed by a jealous lover. Others said she refused to bow to men's expectations. A few, cruel and vocal, suggested that she was sick. Mirembe learned to navigate the shrinking circle of her life with a new caution. She did not flee. If anything, she stayed too long in the places that were hers by memory. The seat on the veranda where her father taught her the names of birds, the shop with the tin roof where he bought bait. She walked these paths like a queen in exile. On a market afternoon heavy with the smell of cassava and the hope of rain, a young pastor with a voice like polished stone stopped her. "Sister," he implored, "the Lord sees suffering. Come to church, let us pray." Mirembe laughed, a sound that used to be a weapon. "Will the Lord have a towel?" she asked, and the pastor's smile stiffened. He was used to quick converts and quieter miracles. But he had seen grief too. His eyes softened. "We will pray for cleansing, spiritually and otherwise," he replied. People adore a simple narrative. Sin, then salvation. The village is full of second acts if you have the vocabulary for them. They began holding prayer vigils for Mirembe, lighting candles at the little church painted blue, and women knelt, hands clasped, whispering. Yet when Mirembe entered, a wave of hands rose like a measured scent, neighbors stepping back, a practiced choreography of preservation. She sat at the back, silence wrapped around her like a shawl, and watched as hands rose to bless, as tongues wrestled with words. But the most dangerous thing about Mirembe's choice was that it opened the town to opportunists. A man named Juma, who kept a juju stall behind the bus stand, declared that he could remove any curse for a small fee and 3 cockroaches from under a lady's bed. He performed with the flourish of a television preacher, smeared chalk on his forehead, a bundle of roots, a promise of return to normalcy. People queued. When Mirembe refused to stand, refused to be a story of redemption, Juma's sermons grew louder. "You must be proud," whispered Lela, her oldest friend, who still kept a stool by Mirembe's veranda. Lela had been with her through every shopping spree and every heartbreak. "Or ashamed? Which one is it?" Mirembe did not answer. She thought of the canoe her father left, unfinished, resting like a tongue against the earth. She thought of storms they had survived, of nights spent with the radio low and the world large. She thought of the men who came and went like seasonal winds, the promises that evaporated. She thought of Nana Amina, the old woman with the weathered words. That night, Mirembe dreamed of washing. Her hands in the dream held a basin of water as clear as glass. She scrubbed and scrubbed until her skin burned, dirt peeled like old wallpaper. Songs rose up from the basin like steam. But when she lifted her face, nothing had changed. The world still smelled of things that could not be named, and in the reflection the woman still held a crown. Broken, yes, but crown nonetheless. In the days that followed, the town grew more inventive in its cruelty. Children dared each other to touch her scarf. Men who once argued for her attention now walked past with their eyes fixed on their shoes. Even the market dogs, who had followed her like ephemeral shadows, turned away as though taught by some invisible leash. Isolation is small and surgical. It finds the small spaces where a soul breathes and tightens them. Yet Mirembe resisted being pitted. She turned inward like a seed and guarded a stubborn green. At night she would sit by her window and read old letters. Her father's careless handwriting, the ink smudged by years of palms. He had written about the canoe. He had written, in a burst of simplicity, that what matters is who sits beside you when the rain finally comes. One evening an unexpected letter arrived. The envelope was not like the others. It bore a stamp from the city, and the handwriting was tight and foreign. She opened it with a trembling hand. A name she had not thought of in years appeared across the page. Ao, her cousin from Lagos, who had once insisted that the continent looked different from the air and promised her a life of bright apartments and brighter promises. Ao's letter was blunt. He told her of an apartment with a balcony that faced the ocean, of work that paid in dollars and of people who wore smiles like armor. He wrote about clubs where music swallowed time and polite lies glinted like chandeliers. At the end of his letter he told her this. "If you come I can help. We will leave this place where the wind only carries memories. Come with your suitcase and your heels. Leave the rest behind." The idea of leaving shone like a bright coin. It tempted Mirembe with the clarity of a new life. She imagined a city where no one knew her name, where her scandals would be gossip for strangers who would forget by morning. For the first time in a year she considered packing. But then Nana Amina appeared at her door. The old woman never visited without a purpose. She shuffled in, a shawl around her shoulders, and carried no judgment. Nana Amina's face had become a map of the village, every wrinkle a road that led to a story. "You will go?" she asked, blunt as a mortar. Mirembe had not told anyone about Ao's letter. "Maybe," she said. "He says there's work." Nana Amina looked at her as if weighing coal. "You think the city will wash your past away? You think a new roof will change the smell?" "It's not about smell," Mirembe protested, though even as she said it, her voice sounded small. Nana Amina sat on the floor and took Mirembe's hand in hands that had sewn hems and baked bread. She smelled of herbs and wind. "Child," she said, The world will not clean what you refuse to admit. You run, it follows. You hide, it learns to wait. Mirembe did not want to admit the truth to the old woman, nor to herself. She had stayed away from water not because the world had changed but because she had been trying to punish someone. The person she had wanted to make feel small was herself. "I want to be seen," she confessed that night for the first time. 2 words that felt like a blade and a bomb at once. I want to be seen as the queen, not the sad girl who lost her father. Nana Amina's mouth softened. "Being seen is a dangerous thing if all you show is the surface," she said. "Beauty is like a drum. You can hear it and you can beat it. But sound is hollow if the hands are not steady. There are moments when a person is spared from the abyss by an ordinary kindness." For Mirembe, it came from an unlikely quarter, the fishmonger Mzee Chuma, whose hands smelled of salt and success. He was not a man of words. His jokes were expensive, the kind that you paid for with a smile. One afternoon, when a group of boys began to throw stones at her window like bad beats on a drum, Mzee Chuma walked up and picked up a small chair. "Sit," he said simply, placing it under the window. The boys, embarrassed by the sudden adult intervention, muttered and scattered. Mzee Chuma stayed and offered her a fish wrapped in newspaper. "For your tea," he said. "You look like you could use a little warmth." The gesture was nothing dramatic. No sermon, no promise of salvation, just a fish in a chair and a man who had watched the river dry and understood the shape of emptiness. Mirembe accepted the fish and felt the oddness of gratitude knot and then unwind inside her chest. Days became a strange mosaic. Rain teased from the horizon but never committed. The town danced around drought like a woman around a jealous lover. Mirembe began to step outside more. Not because she had cured herself, but because she wanted to watch the town watch her. She wore the same dresses she had always worn, though sometimes she left the high heels by the door and walked barefoot, feeling the heat of the ground sting like a confession. Then came the day the baby goat appeared. It was a small animal, stubborn and blinking, with a wobble in its step that made the children coo. No one knew from where it had come. In villages, stray animals often arrive like messages. The goat attached itself to Mirembe as if recognizing something. Maybe a loneliness, maybe an unguarded space. Something the world sometimes recognizes and chooses to claim. Children began to follow her again, this time not to mock but to be near the goat's antics. When the goat climbed a fallen log and bawed at the sun, a woman laughed openly for the first time in months. The laughter was a small earthquake. It shifted the ground under old resentments. Mirembe found herself smiling back, surprised at the ease of it. Rumor, always greedy, now needed new stories to chew. "Her smell is gone," one woman claimed under her breath. "She bathed at night under the mango." But the truth was more complicated. Mirembe had not washed in the way people expected. Instead, she had been sitting in the river at midnight when the moon was a thin coin, letting the water lick at her feet. She did not scrub. She listened. The river, in its minimal mercy, had been a teacher. It had taught her to hear her own breathing and to count the splashes of frogs as they rehearsed for a concert that would, perhaps, never come. It taught her that some things washed off easily. Dirt, ash, the superficial stains of gossip. And some things required a ritual slower than soap. Confession, time, and a willingness to forgive the self. And yet the town was not done with its cruelty. Where life revived, rumor fermented into something worse. One evening, as she returned from the river wrapped in a shawl, a child pointed and shouted a name she had not expected to hear. Sephew, the charcoal seller, who once vowed to leave with her on a whim and then did not. He stood on the road, hands shoved into his pockets, watching her like a man who had found a memory he had misplaced. Their eyes met. For a moment nothing moved. Then Sephew stepped forward as if to apologize or to claim. The town watched. Even the moon seemed to lean in. Mirembe felt something ancient unfurl behind her ribs, something that had slept since her father's canoe had been just a promise. Pride and pain braided together. She looked at Sephew and did the only thing she had left. She smiled. Not the Slay Queen's victorious smile, but a small, real smile that acknowledged a human history between them. Sephew's face crumpled like old bread. He opened his mouth and closed it. He did not speak. That night, sitting alone, Mirembe understood that the story the village told about her was no longer entirely hers. Others had begun to write the margins. She had become a subject and a spectacle, a lesson and a warning. But inside something resolved. Whether the town forgave her or not, she would not let them decide the terms of her surrender. If she had to be seen, she would choose how she was seen. She rose and walked to the unfinished canoe in the yard. Her hands, which had been used to bracelets and phones and perfume bottles, found the plane of wood. It felt familiar, the grain like her father's laugh. She fetched a small, battered bowl of water and, for the first time since the funeral, poured it over her arms. The water was lukewarm and honest. Did not fix everything. Dirt clung stubbornly in the lines of her palms. Her skin was not new. But when she looked at her reflection in a silver spoon, she saw the hint of a woman who could stand up and say, simply, "I tried." Beyond the yard, the town hummed its nocturnal songs, a mixture of crickets and gossip and the mattresses of tired men. In the dim light, Mirembe made a decision both small and monumental. She would not become a cautionary tale. She would not let the year of refused baths define the rest of her life. She did not know then that the year was also not finished with her. A distant rumble no one expected reached the horizon, the kind that can mean either thunder or trouble. Under the mango tree, Nana Amina sat and picked at her shawl, eyes on the sky. She had seen the world tilt before. She had seen kings fall and goats rise. She knew that some stains required more than water. They needed story, truth, and sometimes reckoning. Mirembe went to bed that night with the river's coolness stitched to her soul. She slept and dreamed of being buoyed, of being taken somewhere not by escape but by the steady paddling of a canoe that had finally found the current. In the morning, the town would wake and choose a new rumor. Some would say she had bathed. Others would say she had only gone mad. But for Mirembe, the day's first breath tasted different, less heavy, less like an accusation. The world had not forgiven her, and perhaps it never would. But she had decided to keep walking, to keep owning her choices, and to learn how to be visible on her own terms. This was the beginning, not of the ending, not of the victory, but the start of a reckoning whose echo would ripple far beyond a single village, and which would force everyone who had pointed a finger to look at their own hands. And somewhere beyond the heat and the houses, a visitor was coming.